In a small announcement, Games Workshop's just announced what they're doing for the Grotmas Calendar this year, and apparently there are going to be some 40k rules inbound, potentially starting with Titus himself, though apparently there's going to be quite a lot of other stuff too. Hello and welcome back to Auspex Tactics, where today I thought I'd take a quick video to talk about Games Workshop's small Grotmas announcement. This was one question that we had as to what exactly will be happening for Games Workshop's Advent Calendar reveal this year. It seems they've given us a vague idea as to what's going to happen. Let's do a quick recap of last year's offering and the reactions to it, and then talk about their slightly vague teasers for this year. This video is sponsored by Rattle Studio. If you've got an idea for a project that you want painted up super nicely, I'll talk about their commission painting studio at the end of the video. Generally, the idea of Games Workshop's Advent calendars is to have some sort of content coming out on each day before Christmas. I guess giving people some fun things to engage with each day, in what otherwise could be a slightly quieter part of Games Workshop's calendar. For a few years they did sort of rumour engine style ones, where you had a tiny glimpse of a new model coming out. Sometimes it was obvious, sometimes super meaningless. I seem to remember one where they did a bunch of short stories as well. Last year though, they decided to shake things up a bit. They called it their Grotmas Advent Calendar, theme it around their Red Gobbo Christmas mascot, and basically made it into a big halfway through the edition update for Warhammer 40k with some new content for every single faction in the game. The idea behind the last one was that you get one or more detachments each day, and eventually each 40k army will be covered. They came out as individual pre-scheduled downloads, and the downloads also included any points values that you might need, say for the enhancements in the detachments, so they were fully usable in match play straight away. They still did one of their regularly scheduled balance updates halfway through December, and for the main content of the calendar, it's pretty focused on 40k itself. Age of Sigmar got a more concentrated, smaller scale rules drop, I think on just 1 or 2 days in December, but certainly felt like engagement with their Advent Calendar thing had to be higher than usual, being core rules updates for their most popular game system. Quite a lot of these rules were really quite interesting and impactful. We got the Deity Demon detachment and the Death Watch getting their index back. Both of those were fairly feels-good ones, though also kind of consolation prizes for neither faction getting a codex in 10th edition. Otherwise, the detachments did seem to be a bit hit and miss, though I guess you can say that's true of 40k detachments in general. Some of them were genuinely interesting and have made big impacts on their army. For example, the Necrons got their Star Shatter arsenal. That was so powerful that it initially got nerfed when it came out. The Admech have their Halo Screed Battleclade. That's quite a nice one to support more of the faction as opposed to being locked to more specific keywords. The Drukhari got their allied Harlequins Reaper's Wager, though weirdly enough that's still the most popular detachment in competitive play, even if using no Harlequins. Chaos Marines got their Melee Rush Creations of Bile, and the Grey Knights got their Warpbane Task Force, again the most popular detachment for them right now in tournaments. It really was a bit hit and miss though. There were plenty of them that were just very weak or not particularly interesting, or both. Things like the Eldari Armoured Warhost, the Space Wolves Champions of Rus, the ones for the Thousand Sons and the Assassins and the Imperial Knights were all super weak compared with the alternatives as well. It did mean that while every single faction got some content, there's not necessarily any guarantee that that content was going to be particularly interesting. Overall though, I felt that the reception to last time round was broadly pretty good. Not every detachment was perfect or super competitive or anything, but I'd say the majority were interesting enough, or at least had themes that you knew what they were going for. It maybe came at a time when a few people were finding 10th edition a little stale, and at the same time it wasn't updates that could be completely ignored if you wanted to. If you didn't have interest in the new detachment, you could just stick with what you had and it didn't add any bloat that way. For people's interest and reaction to them, I did feel like the novelty wore off a bit as they rolled them out though. People were very curious to see what was going on at first, quite keen to see what had changed for each army in turn, but later on where people had got the formats, generally just checking things out for their own armies or ones they were interested in, maybe not being super helped out by the fact that a bunch of 40k detachments do tend to retread the same rules beats a bit, quite common stratagems like adding in keywords or reactive moves and things. From my point of view, I thought it was interesting enough to have something easy to talk about on the channel each day, but at the same time did feel a bit repetitive. I wasn't really too sorry when the run came to an end and I had a bit more time to work on other things. With that recap out of the way though, Games Workshop's announced the rough formula for this year, and apparently there will be some Warhammer 40k rules updates, but as mentioned earlier, they're not necessarily going to be the norm or every single day. In a short article on Warhammer Community, they basically stated that this year will be a much more mixed offering for different facets of the hobby, and specifically calling out that there will be some painting guides, some unreleased Warhammer fiction, and then some new rules, strongly implying that they'd both be for Warhammer 40k and for Age of Sigmar as well. And the exact type of the rules that are coming out weren't really too specific either, so it might be narrative scenarios or other fun and flavourful rules as opposed to necessarily every single one being for competitive play. I'd say that's not the end of the world to have a bit more of a balance like that. It means there's the potential for something interesting to turn up each day, but we don't necessarily know what. And it seems kind of likely that the vast majority of 40k factions won't get an update in this one specifically. It's just going to be a few ones that get a content drop. Then as per usual, they will do a big reveal on Christmas Day of some kind. It usually tends to be something at least fairly major. We had Inner Circle Companions and Asmodai on one Christmas Day, and Demon Primarch Fulgrim on another. At this point, it seems likely to be whatever's coming next in that whole 500 Worlds campaign that they're doing. Both Chaos and Eldari Corsairs have been rumoured a fair bit, so maybe we'll see one or both of those. There also looks like there's a teaser image with what seems to be a Stomper potentially wrapped up in the background. I'm not too sure if that's any sort of teaser at all. At first glance, I'm not sure it maps on one-to-one with any of the current Orc Walkers, so feel free to let me know down in the comments. For Warhammer 40k rules things, as well as whatever we get in the actual Grotmas updates, there is a pretty reasonable chance that there'll be a balanced Dataslate update once again. This one's not necessarily 100% guarantees, but with their 3-monthly schedule, we will be expecting the next one in mid-December like they did last year. Though I guess it's still not totally impossible they might flip back to January or something. One thing that we are likely to expect from that is some detachments, whether or not it's from Grotmas or here. They have been releasing a few scattergun detachments for different factions earlier in the year, and they didn't do that for the autumn one, potentially saying that we'd get more this time around. What they did specifically tease though is that Titus is getting something in some way on the first day. This will be the 1st of December, so next Monday. They stated that the first box on the advent calendar has got something to do with a newly promoted captain everyone's been talking about lately, so clearly referring to Titus there. Again though, this is pretty on the nebulous side. I feel like if it's interesting enough for them to hype up, it probably would be something impactful like an in-game datasheet for him. Though admittedly, if they're not confirming its rules for him, it could be all manner of other things. Could be painting guides or lore or some sort of narrative scenario for him. Though perhaps would seem a bit mean if they had an article talking about new 40k rules and then Titus getting something and it was something else, but certainly not completely out of the possibilities. If it does wind up being rules and datasheets though, I just can't really imagine that they'll let them go quite this early if he wasn't releasing until after Christmas sometime. And at the moment we still haven't really had it confirmed when that 500 Worlds book and the Titus miniature is going to be coming out. I believe Games Workshop said that some of the other 40k characters wouldn't be coming out until 2026, though didn't specifically say for Titus and his new book. I do wonder if there's any chance that a content drop for him could predict his model release. If it's coming though, I guess we find out about it a day early, as we'll hear about it on their Sunday pre-orders. In any case, it's not the biggest teaser in the world, but interesting enough to know the general vibe of Games Workshop Advent reveals. What do you guys make of this compared with the previous Grotmas style calendar? We're hoping for another batch of content for every single faction in 40k, or is this acceptable enough and a bit more balanced? That's about it for this one, though before I go I'll just cycle back to the video sponsor in Rattle Studios. One option to get some miniatures painted up super nicely based in the USA. They're run by Morgan Card, an ex-Games Workshop employee who works with a small team of painters, and in general the idea is for these commissioned studios that you have an idea for a project, get in touch with them and they'll give you a quote for what you might want to achieve, generally with different prices depending on the scale of the project, quite how much stuff is included, and the level of quality and special extras that you want for the miniatures. As you can see, they've got a pretty impressive back catalogue of a massive amount of core miniatures here. I did quite like the OSL glowy effect on that rendition of Imitate the Stormlord and that Tower of Arna battlesuit. They can work with 40k and fantasy, and source and assemble miniatures as needed. Here's a very rough price list for them, ranging from around $15 for fully painted 25mm infantry, going up to $200 or so from some of the biggest vehicles around. Check them out, links in the video description if you'd like to contact them to ask them about a project. And if you're a painter as well and wanted to do some commission work through them, get in touch with their email address with the subject paint team. In any case, thanks to them for sponsoring this one. I'll leave that there for now though. Feel free to subscribe to Auspex Tactics if you'd like to see more like this. I'll certainly keep the regular 40k videos coming, with new ones out just about every day. If you'd like to support the channel and keep the videos coming, Auspex Tactics does have a Patreon page as well. You can find that linked in the video description. Channel patrons do get a few advantages, including entry to the monthly giveaways. In any case, a massive thank you for listening, and I'll hope to see you guys next time.